Hi there, thanks for joining us on Let's Talk Taste with Sherry, where we're saving the earth one flavor at a time by gathering community to share wisdom around the natural connections between our innate sense of taste and flavors that are grown in healthy regenerative soils. Welcome. Hey there, Sherry Hess with the Flavor Remedy. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Let's Talk Taste with Sherry, saving the earth one flavor at a time. All right, so today we are going to talk about the idea of flavor perception versus experience. So this was sparked for me by a TED Talk that I watched because, of course, I get on TED Talks and I look up everybody who's doing anything that has anything to do with flavor. I'm actually have a really close connection with a cool lady who has done a TED Talk. But this particular woman is a neuroscientist, and she talks about flavor from this angle of what happens to our brains when we experience flavor. And she did this really funny experiment with her husband, who decided he wanted to go out and buy this single source, fair trade, blah, 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 roasted, amazingly expensive coffee that he insisted that he needed to have because it's so much better than what they had in their kitchen, right? So she's like watching the coffee budget go up, and she's like, all right, as a flavor scientist, she's like, okay, let's dive into this and find out if you can really taste the difference in these two things, right? So she did this funny experiment, and the poor guy got totally taken because she gave him 2 cups of the exact same coffee. And of course, he described them so blatantly different. Like, one was this really acidic, really harsh, and the other one was this beautiful floral, blah, 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 right? So the whole point of this experiment that she did was that his flavor experience was very influenced by his perception and expectation about what he was actually consuming, right? So you should the TED Talk is really interesting, and I really enjoyed it. And she went into depth about how she actually kind of narrows down the limitations of how people experience taste so that she can kind of evaluate how she wants to create flavor in her work, right? So it got me thinking about this whole idea of these preconceived notions that we have around flavors and these ideas that we have about what we're about to eat before we eat it, right? What we know in our brains, and this is actually a connection that I make all the time, the one difference that happens with our sense of taste is that we have to make a choice to experience something on our taste buds, right? So making that choice gives us lots of opportunities to read labels, to learn things, to go out and research things, right? To watch TED Talks, whatever it is. There's all this like knowledge that gets in between the experience of what our taste buds are experiencing and how our brains are responding. So she did a whole like brain connection thing too, like how your brains respond. And it was fascinating to me because she actually said that they can see how your brain does respond differently when you experience an artificial sweet versus a real sweet. So I'm like, kind of like, hashtag goals, having this woman on my show, right? Because I really want to dive into this. Well, what does that mean? But beyond that, it got me thinking about my very favorite book. That is another thing that has completely influenced me doing this whole thing. And that book is The Dorito Effect by Mark Schatzker. Look at this book. Look at all the Post-its and notes. And if you saw the scribbles on all the pages, like this book blew my mind when it came to understanding flavor and what has happened in the world of flavor in the process world. So you should read this book. If you're on this show and if you watch multiple episodes and you really like what I'm doing, you should read this book because it's brilliant. And hopefully someday I can have Mark Schatzker on the show as well, because there's so much in here that teaches us about this perception of flavor versus the actual experience of flavor, right? So the short story of the Dorito itself and what the premise of this book is built upon is a gentleman from Frito-Lay. They were already making corn chips, right? But he went to Mexico and experienced corn chips with salsa on them and came back to Frito and said, I want to create this, salsa flavored chip. And initially the whole concept was rejected because it was like, well, we already have a corn chip. Nobody wants another corn chip. So we pushed it and pushed it and pushed it. And in the whole process, the story's really long, but basically, over a series of years, this flavor technology was developed called gas chromatography. And what gas chromatography is this recreation of smell in the flavor profile. So all the stuff that's on a Dorito that you're experiencing, thinking that you're tasting peppers, onions, cheese, likely the heat is real heat coming from real spices. But all those other sensations that you think you're tasting, and this goes for Pringles, this goes for any flavored chip that's out there, it's not actually an experience on your taste buds. It is all affecting the combination of taste and your sense of smell. It's all talking to your olfactory, right? So this idea of this connection between our sense of smell and our sense of taste has been kind of generalized as this experience of eating, when the reality is our sense of smell and our sense of taste are very different things. They work in conjunction, but they're very different things. So if we're going to talk about the experience of flavor versus the perception of what we're eating, we have to kind of distinguish those two things as separate, right? I mean, there's things in this book that talk about like how long it took to recreate vanilla flavoring. Vanilla flavoring, from an olfactory standpoint, is one of the most complex flavors. It took a really long time for them to create vanilla flavoring because there's so many olfactory things going on in vanilla flavoring. But there's no vanilla in vanilla flavoring. But it made it really easy now for the food industry to make things taste like vanilla because they're totally talking to your nose and not your sense of taste. So it's a fascinating thing. And even beyond just like this kind of fake flavor that's being put on our food that's not even experienced on our taste buds, is this perception of flavor goes so deep, right? We have so many preconceived notions of what something's going to taste like before we even taste it. So there's this consciousness and this connection between our brain and our taste buds that, again, we're not giving reverence to. We're not allowing our bodies to listen to the full experience of, this is a flavor, this is something that's happening in my body, and this is how my brain is responding to it, because we can't really at this point say, hello, what's happening up there? Right? We're just kind of like, we've got this preconceived idea of what it's going to taste like and how it's good for us and why it's good for us and why I need to eat it. And sometimes I have to choke it down and sometimes it tastes really good, but that's probably bad for me. Like there's so much, right, that we have in our brains that we're preconceived notions of what the flavor experience is going to be about, that we're not even letting ourselves like allow that synapse to be a thing, right? We're not even allowing that connection between our senses and our brain to be in the forefront of what drives our choices, because there's so much perception around flavor. So it's a fascinating topic. I'm hoping, we can go here with some more people that can bring wisdom into this conversation, that can really bring us to this place of like, why are we not letting this be real science, letting this be, even if it's just, it might not even be something that needs to be studied. There doesn't have to be this PhD study on it, because the truth is your body is wise. And if we could just let our body's wisdom talk to us more, and let that conscious choice and the preconceived notion just fade into the background a little bit, I'm thinking when we're eating living flavors, we will have a much better, more solid, wise way of choosing flavors and getting that pleasurable experience, while also getting that good brain synapse connection between our eating experience and what our bodies want. What do you think? I think we should do it.